Ivan Yakovych Franko was a Ukrainian poet, writer, social and literary critic, journalist, interpreter, economist, political activist, doctor of philosophy, ethnographer, the author of the first detective novels and modern poetry in the Ukrainian language. He was a political radical, and a founder of the socialist and nationalist movement in western Ukraine. In addition to his own literary work, he also translated the works of such renowned figures as William Shakespeare, Lord Byron, Pedro Calderón de la Barca, Dante Alighieri, Victor Hugo, Adam Mickiewicz, Johann, Wolfgang von Goethe and Friedrich Schiller into the Ukrainian language. Along with Taras Shevchenko, he has had a tremendous impact on modern literary and political thought in Ukraine. Life. Franko was born in the Ukrainian village of Mickiewicz, located then in the Austrian Kronland Galicia, today part of Drohobych Raion, Lviv Oblast, Ukraine. As a child he was baptized as Ivan by Father Josip Levitsky, known as a poet and the author of the first Galician Ruthenian Ramatica, and who was exiled to Mickiewicz for a sharp tongue. At home, however, Ivan was called Myron because of a local superstitious belief that naming a person by a different name will dodge a death. Franko's family in Mickiewicz was considered well-to-do, with their own servants and 24 hectares of their own property. Franko Sr. was reportedly to be a Ukrainized German colonist, or at least Ivan Franko himself believed. The statement is also supported by Timothy Snyder in his book The Reconstruction of Nations, Poland, Ukraine, Lithuania, Belarus, which claims that Yakovych Franko was a village blacksmith of German descent. Snyder, however, stated that Ivan Franko's mother was of Polish petty noble origin, while more detailed sources state that she came from an impoverished Ukrainian noble background. For the well-known Ukrainian noble family Kulchitsky, and was remotely related to Petro Konishevich Savyadashny. According to Yaroslav Rysak, Ivan Franko was of mixed German, Polish and Ukrainian ancestry. Ivan Franko attended school in the village Yasnisia Silna from 1862 until 1864, and from there attended a Basilian monastic school in Drohobych until 1867. His father died before Ivan was able to graduate from the gymnasium, whose editorial board he would later join. A meeting with Mikhailo Drahomanov at Lviv University made a huge impression on Ivan Franko and later developed it into a long political and literary association. Franko's own socialist writings and his association with Drahomanov led to his arrest in 1877, along with Mikhailo Pavlik and Ostap Terletsky. They were accused of belonging to a secret socialist organization, which did not in fact exist. However, the 9 months in prison did not discourage his political writing or activities. In prison, Franko read the satire Smolenska Akademia. After release, he studied the works of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, contributed articles to the Polish newspaper Barca, and helped organize workers' groups in Lviv. In 1878, Franko and Pavlik founded the magazine Ramadsky Drew. Only 2 issues were published before it was banned by the government. However, the journal was reborn under the names DZ Van and Mollet. Franko published a series of books called Dribna Biblioteka from 1878 until his second arrest for arousing the peasants to civil disobedience in 1880. After 3 months in the Kolomiu prison, the writer returned to Lviv. His impressions of this exile are reflected in his novel Na DNA. Upon his release, Franko was kept under police surveillance. At odds with the administration, Franko was expelled from Lviv University, an institution that would be renamed Ivan Franko National University of Lviv after the writer's death. Franko was an active contributor to the journal SVIT in 1881. He wrote more than half of the material, excluding the unsigned editorials. Later that year, Franko moved to his native Mickiewicz, where he wrote the novel Zakoberkit, translated Goethe's Faust and Heine's poem Deutschland, ein Wintermärchen into Ukrainian. He also wrote a series of articles on Taras Shevchenko, and reviewed the collection Kulturna Poezii by Panteleimon Kulish. Franko worked for the journal Zorya, and became a member of the editing board of the newspaper Dilo a year later. He married Olha Korozhinska from Kyiv in May 1886, to whom he dedicated the collection Zvershninisen, a book of poetry and verse. The couple for some time used to live in Vienna, where Ivano Franko met with such people as Theodor Herzl and Thomas Garrigue Masaryk. His wife was to later suffer from a debilitating mental illness due to the death of the firstborn son, Andrei. One of the reasons that Franko would not leave Lviv for a treatment in Kiev in 1916, shortly before his death. In 1888, Franko was a contributor to the journal Pravda, which, along with his association with compatriots from Dnieper, Ukraine, led to a third arrest in 1889. After the 2-month prison term, he co-founded the Ruthenian Ukrainian Radical Party with Mikhailo Drahomanov and Mikhailo Pavlik. Franko was the Radical Party's candidate for seats in the Parliament of Austria-Hungary and the Galicia Diet, but never won an election. In 1891, Franko attended Chernovsky University, and afterwards attended Vienna University to defend a doctoral dissertation on the spiritual romance Balaam and Josaphat under the supervision of Vatroslav Jajic, who was considered the foremost expert of Slavic languages at the time. Franko received his doctorate of philosophy from University of Vienna on July 1, 1893. He was appointed lecturer in the history of Ukrainian literature at Lviv University in 1894. However, he was not able to chair the Department of Ukrainian Literature because of opposition from Vicegerent Kazimierz Badeni and Galician conservative circles. One of his articles, Socialism I Sozialdemokratism, a severe criticism of Ukrainian social democracy and the socialism of Marx and Engels, was published in 1898 in the journal Życie Slovo, which he and his wife founded. He continued his anti-Marxist stance in a collection of poetry entitled Misma in 1898, where he called Marxism a religion founded on dogmas of hatred and class struggle. His long-time collaborative association with Mikhailo Drahomanov was strained due to the diverging views on socialism and the national question. Franko would later accuse Drahomanov of tying Ukraine's fate to that of Russia in Suspilnopolitikny Poliadm. Drahomanov, published in 1906. After a split in the Radical Party in 1899, Franko, together with the Lviv historian Mikhailo Hrushevsky, founded the National Democratic Party, where he worked until 1904, when he retired from political life. In 1902, students and activists in Lviv, embarrassed that Franko was living in poverty, purchased a house for him in the city. He lived there for the remaining 14 years of his life. The house is now the site of the Ivan Franko Museum. In 1914, his Dubli collection, Privat Ivanovi Frankovi, and the collection Islit Moi Molodosti were published. The last 9 years of his life, Ivan Franko rarely wrote himself as he suffered from rheumatism of joints that later led to a paralysis of his right arm. He was greatly assisted by his sons to write his latter works, particularly Andrei. Death. He died in poverty at 4 p.m. on May 28, 1916. Those who came to pay the respects saw him lying on the table covered with nothing but a ragged sheet. His burial and burial clothes were paid for by his admirers, and none of his family came to visit him. Franko was buried at the Lychakiski cemetery in Lviv. Soon after his death, the world witnessed the creation of two Ukrainian republics. Family. Wife Olha Fedorovna Korozhinska, a graduate of the Institute of Noble Dames in Kharkiv and later the two-year higher courses in Kiev. She knew several languages and played a piano. Died in 1941. Children. Andrei Franko died at 27 from a heart failure. Pedro Franko, an engineer-chemist, a veteran of Ukrainian Sikh riflemen, founder of the Ukrainian Air Force, a Ukrainian politician, a people's deputy in the Verkhovna Rada. Pedro Franko had two daughters who after marrying changed their names. Taras Shevchenko, a veteran of Ukrainian Sikh riflemen. Roland Franko, a Ukrainian politician, diplomat, a graduate of Kyiv Polytechnic Institute. By his efforts in 1996, the United Kingdom freely transferred its Antarctic station Faraday to Ukraine, later renamed into Akademischen Vernadsky. Zinovia Rachkovska had sons Darina Franko, Hanna Kliuchko. According to Roland Franko, his grandfather was 1.74 meters tall, had a red hair, always wore moustache and the Ukrainian embroidered shirt even with a dress coat. Some of Franko's descendants emigrated to the USA and Canada. His grandnephew, Yuri Shimko, is a Canadian politician and human rights activist living in Toronto, who was elected to Canada's Parliament as well as the Ontario legislature during the 1980s. Literary works. In 1876, Lezyashyniki Liad and Dva Priateli were published in the literary almanac Nestryanka. Later that year he wrote his first collection of poetry, ballads and tales. His first of the stories in the Borislav series were published in 1877. Franko depicted the harsh experience of Ukrainian workers and peasants in his novels Borislav Laughs and Boa Constrictor. His works deal with Ukrainian nationalism and history, social issues, and philosophy. He has drawn parallels to the Israelites' search for a homeland and the Ukrainian desire for independence in Death of Cain and Moses. Stolen Happiness is considered as his best dramatic masterpiece. In total, Franko has written more than 1,000 works. He was widely promoted in Ukraine during the Soviet period, particularly for his poem Kamenyari, which contains revolutionary political ideas, hence earning him the name Kamenya. Legacy. In 1962, the city of Stanislavov in western Ukraine was renamed Ivano-Frankivsk in the poet's honor. He also is associated with the name Kamenya for his famous poem, Kamenyari, particularly during the Soviet regime. Although his political views mostly did not correspond to the Soviet ideology, in the late 1970s astronomer Nikolai Chernik named an asteroid which honored Franko in this manner. 2428 Kamenya. In the New World, Ivan Franko's legacy is very much alive to this day. Cyril Jenik, the best man at Franko's wedding, emigrated to Canada. Jenik became the first Ukrainian to be employed by the Canadian government, working as an immigration agent. With his cousin Ivan Bodrug and Bodrug's friend Ivan Negrich, the three were known as the in Winnipeg. Imbued by Franko's nationalism and liberalism, Jenik and his triumvirate had no compunction about bringing Bishop Seraphim to Winnipeg in 1903. A renegade Russian monk consecrated a bishop on Mount Athos to free the Ukrainians of all the religious and political groups in Canada who were wrangling to assimilate them. Within 2 years, the charismatic Seraphim built the notorious Incan Cathedral in Winnipeg's North End, which claimed nearly 60,000 adherents. Today, the bust of Ivan Franko, which stands triumphantly on a pillar in the courtyard of the Ivan Franko Manor on McGregor Street, in Winnipeg, looks fondly across the street. 2 churches stood here, the first that Seraphim blessed and opened for service upon his arrival, before building his cathedral. The second was the independent Greek church of which Ivan Bodrug became the head after Seraphim was removed. Franko's consciousness had been bold, and on the level playing ground of the New World it served Ukrainians in Canada to find their own identity as Ukrainian Canadians.